Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Hare Krishna. Thank you all for being here. Srimad bhagavatam, Canto 5, Chapter 12, Text 8. Rahugana, King Rahugana, converses with Jad Bharat. Yada Kshita Eva Chala Chalasya Vidama Nishtam Prabhavam Cha Nityam Tan Namato Anyad Yavahara Moolam Nirupyatam Sat Kriyayanumeyam Yadakshita Vivachala Charasyam Vidamanistam Prabhavam Chanityam Tannamatonyal Vyavahara Moolam Nirupatyam Satkriyayanumeyam Yadakshitav Eva Charachalasya Vidamanistam Prabhavam Chanityam Namatonyad Vyavahara Moolam Nirupyatam Satkriyayanumeyam Yadakshitav Eva Charachalasya Vidamnishtam Prabhavam Chanityam Namatonyad Vyavahara Moolam Nirupatyam Satkriyayanumeyam Mataji's. Thank you. Anybody else? Evam Evam, thus. Don't want to repeat this one. Niruktam. Oh, it's another verse. No wonder. Sorry about that. Yada. Therefore, Shito in the earth. Eva, certainly. Chala chalasya, of different bodies, some moving and some not moving. Vidama, we know. Nishtam, annihilation. Prabhavam, appearance. Cha, and. Nityam, regularly, by the principles of nature. Tat, that. Namata, and simply by name. Anyat, other. Vyavahara Mulam, cause of material activities. Nirupatyam, let it be ascertained. Satkriyaya, by actual employment. Anumeyam, to be inferred. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada. Translation. I just want to make sure this is okay. This is Jad Bharat responding to Maharaj Rahugana. All of us on the surface of the globe are living entities in different forms. Some of us are moving and some not moving. All of us come into existence, remain for some time, and are annihilated when the body is again mingled with the earth. We are all simply different transformations of the earth. Different bodies and capacities are simply transformations of the earth that exist in name only. For everything grows out of the earth when everything is annihilated. And when everything is annihilated, it again mingles with the earth. In other words, we are but dust, and we shall but be dust. Or we shall be but dust. So it says here, we shall but be dust. Everyone can consider this point. Purport is a little long, so we'll just go right into it. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. In the Brahma Sutra, it is said, Tad ananyatvam arabambana sabda dibhyaha. That's 2.114 of Brahma Sutra, which is Vedanta Sutra. The cosmic manifestation is a mixture of matter and spirit, but the cause is the Supreme Brahman, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, in Srimad bhagavatam 1.5.20, it is said, Idam hi vishvam bhagavan nivetaraha. The entire cosmic manifestation is but a transformation of the energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But because of illusion, no one can appreciate that God is non-different from the material world. And as we read this, I know in your transcendental brains, so many questions are going to be coming up. So I hope in the short time we have, we can give some sense to it, some suggested questions and answers. One big question comes up, which we'll mention immediately after we read the purport. Actually, he is not different, but this material world is simply a transformation of his different energies. Parasya Shaktir Vividaya Shuyate. So actually he is non-different but this material world. You could also say he is non-different and this material world is simply a transformation of his different energies. There are also other versions of this in the Vedas. Sarvam Kalavidam Brahma. Matter and spirit are all non-different from the Supreme Brahman, Bhagavan. Lord Sri Krishna confirms this statement in Bhagavad Gita. Me bina prakritir astada. The material energy is Krishna's energy, but it is separated from him. The spiritual energy is also his energy, but it is not separated from him. When the material energy is engaged in the service of the Supreme Spirit, so-called material energy is also transformed into spiritual energy, just as an iron rod becomes fire when placed in contact with fire. When we can understand by an analytical study that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the cause of all causes, our knowledge is perfect. Simply understanding the transformations of different energies is partial knowledge. We must come to the ultimate cause. Nate vidu svartakatim hi Vishnu. The knowledge of those who are not interested in knowing the original cause of all emanations is never perfect knowledge. There is nothing in the phenomenal world that is not produced by the supreme energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Aromas from the earth are different scents manufactured and used for different purposes, but the original cause is the earth, nothing else. A water pot made of earth can be used to carry water for some time, but ultimately the pot is nothing but earth. Therefore, there is no difference between the pot and its original ingredient, earth. Now, so we don't get lost, it's not that Prabhupada is saying that earth is the ultimate cause of all causes, that we're, earth worshippers per se, or pantheists or something like that. It's an example. He's giving an example in our common experience. We can break it down, reduce it to earth. He gives the example, a water pot made of earth can be used to carry water for some time, but ultimately the pot is nothing but earth. Therefore, there is no difference between the pot and its original ingredient, earth. It is simply a different transformation of the energy. Originally, the cause or primary ingredient is earth. No, not earth. It is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And the varieties are only byproducts. In the Chandogya Upanishad it is said, Yata som yekena mrit pindena sarvam mrimayam vigyatam syad vacharam banam vikaro namadeyam mritiketyeva satyam. If one studies the earth, he naturally understands the byproducts of the earth. The Vedas therefore enjoin, Yasmin vyakte sarvam vigyatam bhavati. If one simply understands the original cause, Krishna, the cause of all causes, then naturally everything else is understood, although it may be presented in different varieties. By understanding the original cause of different varieties, one can understand everything. If we understand Krishna, the original cause of everything, we do not need to separately study the subsidiary varieties. Therefore, from the very beginning it is said, Satyam Param Dhimahi. One has to concentrate one's understanding on the supreme truth, Krishna or Vasudeva. The word Vasudeva indicates the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the cause of all causes. Matstani sarvabhutani nachaham te sravastitaha. This is a summary of phenomenal and nominal philosophy. This is a summary of nominal and phenomenal philosophy, or phenomenal and nominal philosophy. The phenomenal world depends on the nominal existence. Similarly, everything exists by virtue of the potency of the Supreme Lord, although due to our ignorance, the Supreme Lord is not perceived in everything. I'll read the text again. All of us on the surface of the globe are living entities in different forms. Some of us are moving, some not moving. All of us come into existence, remain for some time, and are annihilated when the body is again mingled with the earth. We are all simply different transformations of the earth. Different bodies and capacities are simply transformations of the earth, that exist in name only, for everything grows out of the earth. When everything is annihilated, it again mingles with the earth. And when everything is annihilated, it again mingles with the earth. In other words, we are but dust, and we shall be but dust. Everyone can consider this point. Of course, Jad Bharat is speaking from the material perspective, and then also in the purport, then we get the deeper understanding. But here, teaching Maharaja Hugana, he wanted to hear things in a very simple way, even materially speaking, or from the material point of view. Actually, what are we? We're just earth, we're just dust. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust, as it goes. Also in Ishopanishad, someone knows the text 17, Anilam, Amritam, Bhashmantam, what is it? Let the air of life be merged into the totality of air. Let this body immediately be burnt to ashes. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust. We don't have any disagreement with the Christian phrase, ashes to ashes, dust to dust. Om Jnanatimidandasya Jananjana Shalakya Chakshurmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was certainly born in the most darkness of ignorance, but my spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada, has kindly opened my eyes with a torchlight of knowledge. Therefore, for my humble obeisances unto him. Srila Prabhupada ki. So, what to do? There's so much here and not so much time. Now, I mentioned that questions do come up. One big question is this, here the material world is saying it's not different from God. So if it's not different from God, that's one of, a little later we'll go through some points in this question. Is material world real or is it not real? This is a basic question, isn't it? Is material world real or is it not real? I think it's a worthwhile question to consider. So, if the material world is non-different from Krishna, how can we say it's not real? Then you're saying Krishna's not real, it seems. But, what does it say in the very next verse? Don't worry, we're not going to go into the next verse, but just, what does it say in the next verse? It says, one may say that varieties arise from the planet Earth itself. However, although the universe may temporarily appear to be the truth, it ultimately has no real existence. That's not the only verse that says that. We have the first verse, that even the demigods, they think this muyanti yakshura, they think the world is real, although it is unreal. So we hear very explicitly in various texts that the material world is unreal. We'll give a couple of other references when we get into this brief analysis. We'll give why we say the world is real and why we say the world is unreal. And then we try to get to the solution. The solution has to do with what do we mean by real? This is called ontology. What does it mean to exist? The solution has something to do with also the way we perceive things. If we perceive things without Krishna, then there is no reality. If we perceive things with Krishna, understanding that the ultimate cause is not earth, but is actually Krishna, and earth is coming from Krishna also. Binir prakriti ashtada. Then we move towards, then we understand the reality of the material world. So this is the basic thesis. But here we're seeing this question, big question comes up. So if the world is actually not different from the Lord, the absolute truth, Janma dasyataha, that from which everything emanates, and is actually not different from that, then how can it be unreal? The Mayavadis, they don't see that the material world is coming from Brahman. They think that would be a defect in Brahman. So they can't explain what is this Maya, what is this material world. Okay. So let's get into some topics here. The basic idea, Sri Maharaj Rahugana, he's preaching to Jad Bharat. We just mentioned just one reference. Ayushriyam yasho dharmam lokanashisha eva cha hanti shrayam si salvani pumsho mahadavikramaha. When a person mistreats great souls, his lifespan, opulence, reputation, religion, possessions, and good fortune are all destroyed. This comes up, quoted many times. It's in the 10th canto, 4th chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam. It's also in CC, and it's quoted 5-6 times throughout Bhagavatam in different contexts. So I'm applying it to this context because you can see there's so much at stake here. Jai Shri Shri Gaurnitai ki Jai, Shri Shri Krishna Balaram ki Jai, Shri Shri Radha Shyama Sundara ki Jai. Hare Krishna. There's so much at stake. Aside from the fact that it behooves every living entity to understand what is real, what is not real, what is my position, how can I tamasima jyotirgama, how can I leave the darkness and go to the light? How can I stop accepting temporary material bodies and become immortal? How can I get out of ignorance and go to the supreme reality? It's for everybody. There's a lot at stake for any living entity, but in this particular case, the teaching also has this extra dramatic tension, because Maharaj Rahugana had offended this great soul. Fortunately, he immediately prostrated himself when he realized this is a self-realized soul. I made a mistake. This is gentleman. At least he understood. He made a bad error. But now you can see how he's trying to understand the instructions of Jad Bharat. So let's look at some things. The maximum benefit for all living entities, of course we say, and it's not untrue, become Krishna conscious. But it's also stated in the second verse, Vedyam vastavam atra vastu shivadan tapaktrayonmulanam, that the Srimad Bhagavatam propounds the highest truth, which is understandable by those who are pure in heart. In other words, if we're not pure in heart, we can't completely understand the absolute truth. The highest truth, what is the highest truth? Is reality distinguished from illusion, from the welfare of all. And what did Prabhupada say, or write in Bhagavad Gita purport? That what is real knowledge? Real knowledge means to understand spirit, to understand matter, and to understand the origin of both. We hear this fancy language at the end of the purport. That's also there in, what is it? Gyanam teyam savigyanam nidam prapaksham shayishataha yakyatva nehapuyo nyaj avishishate, gyatavyam avishishate. That now I will explain to you this knowledge and different ways of translating. I think we have now both nominal and phenomenal, or they say numinous, I'm not sure. Nominal and phenomenal. Or both spiritual and material. In other words, the nomina is, and this is very important distinction, that whatever language you use, but there's a very important distinction which will help us to answer that question that came up at the beginning. Is this world real or is it not real? The difference between phenomena and noumena. Phenomena means, phenomenal world means how we are perceiving the world with these material senses. That is phenomenal world. And nominal means the spirit behind it, means the basis of it, the spiritual status of the world, or how the world is resting on spirit. Not like the demons, the satyama pratistante jagarahurdanishvaram. What is the Bhagavatam demoniac? Whoa, how can you forget it? Bhagavatam is the solution to everything, especially in Kali Yuga. So why is the Bhagavatam saying the world is unreal? We'll give some other references also. Other verses where it says the world is unreal, very bluntly. And the demons, they're saying the world is unreal. But the difference is that we are saying that the world as we perceive it is unreal, not the actual noumena, not the things in itself. These are terms from the very, very big philosopher Immanuel Kant, noumena and phenomena. All right, now that I've gone this far with this point, I'll finish the point. The plan is probably a 3-hour class, so I'll have to kind of jump ahead a little more than the plan dictates. Before Kant, there was John Locke. Now try to pay attention to this. This is not Maya. You can get very good lesson even from impure place. So there's John Locke. He was very intelligent. He was saying that there's something mysterious going on. There's something that we have no access to this knowledge. By being a philosophical or metaphysical or ontological agnostic, someone who says, well, it's there, but we can never know it, that is not true. That was a mistake of the great philosopher, John Locke. Why is that? Because as Sahotra Swami has emphasized in the entire book called Substance and Shadow, it's in the database, by the way, the Western philosophers, they limit themselves, this is called the epistemology, the theory of knowledge, only to pratyaksha anuman, only to direct sense perception, and then inference, mental speculation, logic, derived from whatever comes in from my senses. That is the sum total of the sources of Western philosophical understanding. They don't accept Shabda. Shabda means hearing from authority. Just like in Bhagavad Gita, Yet Vivanga Jananta Shrupanebhya Upasate Tepiche Ditaranteva Mrityum Shruti Parayana. There are others that they may not know any knowledge of philosophy. They may not be spiritually educated. But just because of their tendencies of Shabda, just because of their tendency to hear from authority, they can transcend the ocean of birth and death. Mrityu Shruti Parayana. By hearing, they become Tibi Cheti Tarantiva, Taranti. They can overcome this drowning in the ocean of birth and death. So this John Locke, what was the good thing that he was pointing out? He was pointing out that actually our knowledge is limited. Now we disagree, it doesn't have to remain limited. By Shruti, by hearing, Tat Shrinu, simply hear, by hearing, then we can actually understand these mysteries. That was a mistake, by saying we just can never understand them. We have to just settle for living in a world which is not the noumena, it's not the thing in itself, it's just the way we perceive it. He was pointing out very correctly there are two mysteries. One is what is really out there. And that's what this purport is explaining to us. What's really there is Krishna. Not just earth, but what's really there is Krishna. More advanced devotee, Uttama Adhikar, he sees Krishna, 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 Krishna. He doesn't even have to go through the 2 stages of samadhi, I forget the technical term, in chapter 6 mentioned. He doesn't even have to go through some logical process. He immediately connects everything with Krishna. So how is the world unreal for him? Actually, it's described, although Dukkaliyama Shashvatam, for very advanced devotee, what is it, Bilvamangala Thakur, or who was it? Was saying that the world becomes Vishram Sukha, Purnam Sukha Sanjayate, Vishram Purna Sanjayate, the world becomes filled with joy and happiness. Happiness? The world is miserable. No, but if one actually sees the noumena. Now this poor fellow, John Locke, great philosopher, but he didn't quite make it because he didn't accept hearing from authority. Of course we can't perceive with our senses that which is beyond our senses, spirit in general, what to speak of Adhoksaja, Sri Krishna. But he just wrote it off. He said, we can never understand. And from that idea, there are other, like there's a philosophy called phenomenology, which also says we're not going to enter into what's really out there. We can never know. So let's not even think about it. In other words, an ontology or the study of existence really doesn't matter because you can never know. How sad to condemn us and limit us to phenomena only. So then they go into this whole elaborate analysis of how we experience things, and very much based on the limitation of the human body. This is phenomenology, a whole school of philosophy, not so long ago. The other mystery that John Locke was also pointing to was not only what are the things in themselves, but what's inside us? Who is the perceiver? You can call it a soul, you can call it a self, you can call it Atma, if you come from Vedic background. Whatever you may call it, we can never know it. Because John Locke was empiricist. He was unnecessarily limiting himself only to sense perception. You can say, okay, well, what about the idealists or the rationalists? Then they're going to Anuman. But the combination of sense perception and reason and logic and mental speculation, or even philosophical speculation, that combination does not yield knowledge of the noumena. So what John Locke was saying at the end is all we can know are the transactions between the senses and the sense objects. And that's all we can know. Don't even think about trying to understand the things in themselves, what's really out there, or who I am. You can never know it because it's beyond the range of our senses, so forget it. Very sad situation. Now, but we grow up, and unless we get the mercy of a saint, and we hear from Sri Guru Parampara, we also restrict ourselves unnecessarily, if for no other reason out of laziness, to the transaction between the senses and the sense object. That is also described in Vishayendriya Samyogat Yatadagre Mritopanam Pariname Vritameva Tatsukam Rajasam Smritam. This is the happiness we're looking for in the material world. How my senses can interact with the sense object. But not only a source of pleasure, but the source of so-called reality becomes restricted to the transactions between the senses and the sense object. Now this is not just some Western comment. This is also there in Srimad Bhagavatam. So much description is there in Canto 3, is it? Canto 2. What is it called? The Tanmatras. Tanmatras are not the noumena, they're not the things in themselves. They're a subtle expansion of the actual mahabhutas, the actual elements, getting closer and closer to the actual source of everything, the essence of everything, which is Krishna. And just like chapter 10, Bhagavad Gita, so many examples, Vibhuti Yoga. Tanmatras are the sense objects, the impressions that we get. Let me make it clearer. The same old question. If a tree falls in the woods and there's nobody there, there's just nobody there. We know that trees and other trees there. Let's just say in the example, there's just nobody there to hear that big sound. Was there a sound or was there not a sound? You might say, of course there was a sound. But actually sound is only the next step after just this vibration in the ether enters the ear. It could be a human being, it could be a bear, it could be a bird. Birds have ears, right? Enter into the ear of the perceiving personality. In other words, without someone there to hear it, there's no sound. You can say, I'm the sound in ether. Okay, so then you can argue, no, of course there's sound. It says, I'm the sound in ether. But not the kind of sound like you hear that tree crashing. That's a perception. There's a modern philosophers and scientists, they cannot explain qualia. Qualia is like what we experience, the redness of red, or the sound of that tree falling, because it's all just physical vibration, but the experience, they can't explain that. The point I'm trying to get to here is that the experiences, the colors, the sounds, everything that comprises our world in a material existence is not the noumena, it's only the phenomena. And in that sense, the world is unreal. Let me jump ahead now to this idea, how to manage the paradox that emerges from a careful reading of today's text and its purport and tomorrow's text. In other words, is the world real or is it not real? So let's look at arguments saying the world is real. Of course it's real. This is called in philosophy, it's called in epistemology, it's called naive realism. Naive, you mean like childish realism. What you see is what you get. Of course it's real. How can it not be real? But I just explained, or tried to explain, that just because it seems real to my senses, it's not the noumena, it's only the phenomena. It's not the thing that's really objectively existing. In one sense, we could say what's objectively existing here is Earth. Just like Jad Bharat is pointing out, that we are just, from material point of view, we're just Earth. Like the Rubaiyat, Omar Khayyam, who talks about, we're just like pots, and the potter comes, he'll break us up, and we'll become Earth again. Again, ashes to ashes, dust to dust. The end of the text says, we're just dust. In other words, we are but dust, and we shall be but dust. So, naive realism is placing too much, investing too much reality in these ephemeral impressions of our senses, which I'm trying to explain does not really bring us to what's really out there, what's really happening. In other words, anyway, second point, how the world is real. Well, real is because we, from a formal point of view, we are obliged to follow Madhvacharya, where Brahma, Madhva, Gaudiya Sampradaya. And Madhva, and perhaps some of the other Sampradayas, their conclusion about the world is real. So we don't say it's unreal. And not only that, but our founder Acharya of ISKCON has also stated explicitly, the world is real but temporary. Now that's a little complicated to understand. It sounds like it may be an oxymoron. Oxymoron means a self-contradictory statement. in chapter 2 of Bhagavad Gita, we have the rigorous standard of what it means to exist. We have the ontology, siddhanta of the ontology. What is that? Nashato vidyate bhavo, na bhavo vidyate sata. But that which really exists, there's no change. It's not going to exist for 1,000,000 years and then finish. It's eternal. And that which is not eternal does not, in the ultimate issue, really exist. If it didn't exist eternally and then for some time it exists and then it never exists in the future, is that real substantial existence? But here we're saying how the material world is real, so we're just saying our founder Acharya says it's real. Madhva says the world is real, so it's real, right? Another argument. Srila Prabhupada has also stated, how can it be unreal as it is Krishna's energy? It emanates from the absolute truth. Well, we mentioned at the beginning. That's the way of understanding. By understanding the nomena, by understanding the thing in itself and the spiritual basis of everything, then it's understandable how the world is real. When it's connected with Krishna, it's real. What does it say in second chapter shloki? Rite ritam na pratiyeta na pratiyete chatmani tad vidyad atmano mayam yatha vasho yatha tamaha. That anything that is perceived without connection to me, know it as Maya, has no value. How does Srila Prabhupada put it? Simple example, you have 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. Does it have any value? What is the value? Of 1,000,000 zeros, you add them all up. What do you end up with? Zero. That's not so difficult. You end up with 0. But what if you put a 1 in front of it? Then you have 10 or 100, 1,000. Big number. We're hearing a lot of big numbers the last couple of classes. How many years, how many lifetimes we were in this material world being conditioned, and now we, along with Jad Bharat, we along with Maharaj Rahugana, by hearing from Jad Bharat, we're becoming free. So there's another, that if we put that 1 in front of it, as Prabhupada says, how could it be unreal? It's coming from the ultimate reality. How could it be unreal? And this is Prabhupada also, seeing the world is not different from Krishna. Strong statement. And then of course we get into the connection. Like in Bhagavad Gita in chapter 13, it's described that somehow or another they become related. These are two ontologically distinct tattvas called spirit and matter. But somehow they become connected. Some yoga. Kshetraya some yoga. Somehow they become some yoga. Somehow they become connected. So how does that connection, practically speaking, that's there. If we take something material, this is material, it's just some metal and some object. It's nice and hard. These cartels, I'd be very surprised if they didn't last a lot longer than this body, especially at my age. I'll be back to earth, dust. And the cartels, you may lose them. They may get stuck in the ground somewhere, but then maybe 500 years ago, someone will find these. They'll still look like this nice, strong something, right? But someday they'll also just become dust, just like the whole universe will be annihilated. But if I take this dust thing and I use it like I was trying to do, I would say, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Then, is it material or spiritual? Then we can understand how the material world, it's not an oxymoron. That word oxymoron, again, it means a self-contradictory statement. to say that the Prabhupada would say, the world is real, but it's temporary. Now, according to Bhagavad Gita 2:16, how could we understand that? If something's only temporary, how could it really be Sat? Sat means eternal. Like that mystery inside that John Locke had no access to, that is called the Atma. Aschayavat pasyati kashtarinam aschaya. The amazing, wonderful, astonishing entity which each one of us is. Of course, most of us have no reason to become puffed up about that, because we're still thinking we're these bodies. But if we actually get to that mystery inside, it's a very wonderful thing. Mamaivam sa jiva loke, jiva bhuti, etc. So, if we use even this body or these cartels or this microphone in Krishna's service, then we see how it could be like the iron rod in the fire. It becomes, for all intents and purposes, it becomes real and becomes spiritual, because it's being connected with the eternal kirtan, the eternal chanting, the eternal activity of devotional service in the spiritual world. It's the whole idea of constructing this big mandir, a big temple, and having a whole, of course we're in Vrindavan, and having this whole spiritual environment. Does that mean that in the material world that this temple, I'm sorry to say it, but I would say 5,000 years from now, I don't know. I mean, will the temple still be like this? I mean, we're big boys and girls. I mean, let's bite the bullet and accept the fact that in that sense it's temporary, but it's real and yet temporary. How is that? Because it's being connected. Like the iron rod in the fire, it's being connected with the Supreme Reality. That is the difference between us and the Mayavadis. We can say, there's this one book came out called Our Original Position, as pointed out. There's the two fundamental Vedic ontological categories, spirit and matter. It's like trying to mix water and oil. You can't mix it. They're separate. Of course, in the verse it says, all us living entities are, we are different forms, and sometimes we are all simply, here in the purport, the cosmic manifestation is a mixture of matter and spirit. It's a mix.